Fox News alert. We were told Alex Pretti was just a peaceful nurse at the wrong place at the wrong time, delivering first aid to an injured protester. Well, we just obtained new video, days before the shooting, of a man who appears to be Pretti being not so peaceful. The Pretti family attorney and family members confirmed to the Minnesota Star-Tribune that the person in the video is Pretti. CNN reported that Pretti had a broken rib from an altercation with federal agents a week before his death. CNN claimed Pretti was just driving around minding his own business when he saw ICE agents chasing an immigrant family down the street. He went after them, jumped out of his car to help the family, then was tackled. Now, if this is the incident, it looks like CNN had bad sources. This video shows the individual with similar clothing and what looks and appears to be a handgun in the same place that it was at the time of the shooting, kicking the taillight out of a federal vehicle in the middle of an apprehension operation, and then violently resisting arrest. At one point, it even looks like he spits at the window of the ICE agent's vehicle. Homeland Security tells us the video is under investigation. This doesn't mean that his shooting a week later was justified. That's still under investigation. But it does paint a different picture of who Pretti was and the kind of violent attacks that ICE and Border Patrol have to deal with while they're arresting criminal aliens. The same thing happened with Renee Good. The media tells us she was just a random woman stuck in traffic after dropping her kid off at school. But later we learned she was a trained ICE Watch warrior out to cause trouble. Again, that doesn't mean she deserved to die. But the media is whipping people up with phony obituaries that don't tell the whole story. It's why Democrats running for office are flocking to Minneapolis for photo ops.
In a real sense, this is holy ground. Consecrated by blood spilled here. I had to be here to stand in the very place where this tragedy unfurled, not only for Alex Pretti, but for Renee Good, for George Floyd.
Reverend Warnock just suggested Floyd and the two ICE watchers were like Jesus. It's a crime scene, not a cross, Reverend. Laken Riley was Warnock's constituent in Georgia. I never saw him broken up about her. But now he's flying to other states and crying. Tim Walz made an appearance at the memorial today. Watch.
We're just personally paying our respects,
Sure.
My wife and I.
And do you believe that there will be a shift in tone here from the administration after your conversation with the president here on the streets?
I'm not so interested in a shift of tone. We just need them out of here, and we need accountability for what's happened.
Walz is speaking out of both sides of his mouth. On the phone with Trump, he says he's going to work with ICE as long as Bovino leaves and cooperate and hand over the bad guys. Then he hits the streets and tells the press ICE has got to go. Yesterday, the mob stormed into the Capitol building and hollered at his office. Why? Oh, because they said Tim's a traitor for doing business with Trump and Homan.
Tom Homan's a professional, which is a lot more than Bovino and Christy Nome. Tom Homan landed last night, and he called me last night and asked if he could have a meeting, and he was there at 9 o'clock. So, look, I think that's progress, but they started this fire, so we're not giving anybody credit for putting it out.
Walz keeps changing his tune depending on who he's talking to because he's under investigation by the Department of Justice. One case for obstructing federal law enforcement, another for Somali fraud. Walz needed to broker an ICE peace deal with Trump. PBD was on primetime last night. Watch this.
I think he's also trying to make sure he's protected long term. I don't know what happens on these calls. I would only say I don't know what he's going to ask for. You know, wink, wink. Hey, if I work with you on this, can I get a pardon? I don't know what the guy's going to be asking the president. You know, these guys have a lot of audacity.
Look at Walz today, sending out fundraising messages, asking for money so he can hire lawyers. The email says, if you're with me, please rush a donation. Walz is going to have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars defending himself in the Somali fraud case, and he's broke. Just in 2024, he disclosed he only has between $15,000 and $50,000 in cash and in savings. It's going to cost at least 50 G's for the retainer. These guys charge $1,000 to $2,000 an hour to fight federal charges. Hunter Biden spent between $5 and $10 million on lawyers, or his sugar daddy did. Does Walz have a sugar daddy? I don't think so. And Walz can't take a line of credit out on his house because he doesn't own one. In federal investigations like this, prosecutors are going to get targets to flip and name big names. Omar, Keith Ellison, Walz, he's the biggest. We already know he blew off whistleblowers, and his staff was caught doctoring documents in a cover-up, while millions of dollars are flying out of the Minneapolis airport. Maybe some money winds up in the hands of terrorists. Walz could lose everything if he's found guilty. Of course, he's going to hand over the bad hombres. That's what any rational person would do in his position. But Trump prosecutors aren't done. Just last night, Homeland Security took down 16 ICE rioters. Pam Bondi flew into town, and she says she's about to bring a boatload of cases. These aren't your run-of-the-mill, salt-of-the-earth, peace and love protesters. These guys are hardcore. The women are gnarly. Even Somalis. This is Nasra Ahmed. We don't really know what she does or who she is, but Minnesota Democrats brought her out and let her tell her story last week. Listen.
To me, being Somali isn't just eating bananas with rice. It's a lot. It's like it's an interesting thing. It's like a cultural fusion. It's kind of like the bananas and rice. You know, people don't think, oh, you can eat bananas with rice, but that's what it's like to be Somali and American. It's like that combination of banana and rice.
We're not really sure what that means, but she was just arrested for assaulting federal cops. The whole thing's gotten kind of weird in Minneapolis. Last night, Omar held a town hall and someone stood up and squirted her with some liquid.
I don't know.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. He sprayed something on her.
Now, thank God that wasn't some sort of chemical agent. She could have been seriously hurt. CNN confirmed that it was just a little apple cider vinegar. Trump said it wouldn't surprise him if it was an inside job, but so far there's no evidence of that. But the FBI is investigating, and they'll find out exactly what happened. But if you want to talk about crazy, former Governor Jesse "the Body" Ventura, no relation, is calling on Minnesota to secede from the union.
How about since Trump dislikes Minnesota so bad and we're so out of control, let's join Canada. Instead of Canada becoming the 51st state of America and lose their health care, like they said, I'd like to see Minnesota, all of us, become Canadians. It's obvious Donald Trump don't want us.
We love Minnesota. It's like one of the most beautiful states in the union. We just don't like it when they steal $8 billion and harbor foreign child molesters. Wisconsin's not doing that. Michigan's not doing that. What kind of state riots to keep killers and fraudsters on their streets? Other Democrats are jealous that Tampon's getting all of this resistance press, so now they're all using the N-word.
This is a small bunch of wannabe Nazis. That's what they are. In a country of 350 million, we outnumber them. If we have to hunt you down the way they hunted down Nazis for decades, we will find your identities, we will find you, we will achieve justice.
That was Uncle Larry Krasner, Philly DA. The streets love Uncle Larry because he keeps the jails empty. The only person they want in jail in this country is Trump and Miller.
Stephen Miller, like a man named Ben Detson, he was the one who created the internment camps for Japanese. Heinrich Himmler in the Nazi regime. This is what he is. People like Stephen Miller will go down in history as evil, had blood on his hands, and should be jailed at the very end of this.
You weren't allowed to call COVID the China virus, remember? But you can go out and call the White House Deputy Chief of Staff a Nazi, and the guy's Jewish. Now the Democrats are back to talking about lynchings. Listen. And the most unpopular mayor in the country with the most homicides in the nation just joined the party.
As it relates to Gregory Bavino, we've seen examples of other forms of tyranny that have led to concentration camps and the annihilation or the attempt annihilation of people groups. Okay.
The Holocaust Museum just spanked Walz for comparing illegals to Anne Frank. If you guys are watching, that was the mayor of Chicago. Little bit of a stretch. Democrats, they say, nope, they're not going far enough.
I don't think that the comparisons with Nazi Germany are extreme, because that's what happened too. That's why ordinary German citizens began to accept the idea that certain members of their community would be singled out. I mean, they have ICE tip lines, would be directly targeted in violation of the laws of the land. And it would be done as by agents of the state.
ICE tip lines? Walz had COVID snitch lines. And can you believe illegals are the new Jews? Democrats are setting it up so when they take power, they're going to hold Nuremberg-style trials and try to hang and incarcerate Miller, Noem, Bavino, ICE agents just for deporting illegals. You don't believe me? Watch.
I think there should be something equivalent to the Nuremberg trials after this is all over.
I agree.
And to make it clear that once we're back in power, which we will be, this is going to happen. And the statute of limitations on murder is?
Zero.
Never.
Yeah, never.
However, it's the boring that moves the needle.
Democrats want to put you on trial for enforcing the law. Well, you know who might have to take a stand first? Barack Obama.
My job in the executive branch is supposed to be to carry out the laws that are passed. If we start broadening that, then essentially I would be ignoring the law in a way that I think would be very difficult to defend legally. So that's not an option.
But Barack's about as two-faced as tampon. Here's what the former president just uttered from an undisclosed location. Quote, "It's important to understand the broader implications of what this administration is doing and the threat it poses to the basic freedoms of every American." Barack Hussein deported 3 million illegals. Liberals never rioted, fought ICE, called him a Nazi. Obama gave Homan a medal for deporting so many migrants. But when Trump and Homan do it, they want to put him on trial. This is about power, and it's already slipping away. New York and California are already projected to lose 6 seats after the next census. With mass deportations, it'll reduce their numbers even further. They need to keep the population up to get more federal cash and more congressional seats. Democrats are calling for bills to prohibit ICE from going near the voting booths. The former governor of Washington says Senate Dems need to put into the appropriations bill a prohibition on ICE agents being near polling places. This is a must-have. Last chance to do this. Why do they care if ICE is near a polling station? I thought they didn't vote. In the Senate, Majority Leader John Thune, he wants to require photo ID and U.S. citizenship to vote. They're putting that in their next big funding bill next week. This is huge. National photo ID would stop Democrat shenanigans dead in their tracks. Once you realize illegal immigration is the pillar of the Democratic Party, voting, welfare, fraud, congressional districts, you realize why they're fighting to the death in the streets. If they don't like what Trump is doing, well, win an election. That's what Trump did.
Donald Trump is doing what the people elected him to do. Get rid of the illegal immigration.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.